Very good evening again, everyone, in this financial and estate planning series. Welcome from Sneak Rehab Foundation. As you all know, we are in on financial and estate planning series, and we have done many topics on that. So today's topic, we are starting with private trust, know about private trust and its benefits. So uh, for that we have with us Mr. Jitendra Solanki sir. You all know, but I'll just briefly introduce him. He's the founder of Plan Special Needs SEBI Registered Investment Advisor, CFP and CTEF, and founder and director at Special Needs Estate Planning Private Limited. So we will start with today's topic, that is know about private trust and benefits. Sir, welcome sir, and I will hand it over to you without wasting much of a time.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. Okay. Okay. Right. So we'll talk today about special need trust. Now, when a trust prepared for special child as a beneficiary. Now, in India, special need trust are structured under private trust. So we will talk about private trust today. Brief about Special Need Estate Planners Private Limited. So that's an organization which focus exclusively on advising special needs dependent families, and through this organization we cater to estate and succession planning matters for the families. Today's agenda will why estate planning, a trust, is benefits, taxation we will look at, and we look at living trust. Now, generally, one of the question arises because I am going to start with this slide because this is the basis of all planning you do. How do you identify what areas you have to plan? What are the concerns? And when to start planning. So planning with life stages, I have always been vocal about this timeline because it's wonderfully represent the areas of planning for you and at what life stages. So like, the 5 life stages, if you can draw the timeline, minority, what are the issues, what you have to address, then the child moves to an adult phase, living at home, similarly adult external environment, shifted to a residential care, first parent death, the second parent death, and then the end of child life. So this is a complete timeline of child life, and you can actually be more comprehensive with ages also, at what life stage which you can expect this. So when you draw this timeline, you are more or less identifying the requirements and the concern. So at first parent death, so the probate, trust administration, trustees, funding of trust, these are going to be prominent areas where you will have to plan. Similarly, when the child moves to an adult phase, services support, employment, residential needs, the trust, identifying trustees, so these are going to be the prominent areas. So that's how you plan out for the child future. Now, what are the challenges family has to play, especially when we talk about estate planning? So maintaining quality of life for special need child. Now that's the biggest concern, and that's the primary concern, that my child should have the same quality of life after me what I have given to her or him. Equal treatment to siblings. Yes, every parent wants that, even though I have a special child, even though I have to leave more for him, but the sibling also should not be there should be an equal treatment to both the child. Adequate provision for special child care after them, and a proper structure for distribution of inheritance to the child. So these are the challenges a family face. These are the challenges a family have to address when you are planning for the child future. Now, why estate planning is so important? Maximize inheritance designated to hires, legal hires. So how to maximize this inheritance which is going to be passed on to the legal hires? Minimize estate taxes and expenses. Estate taxes we do not have in India, but expenses are going to be when suppose the will has to be executed, at or in the second parent death. So how do you minimize those? Review testamentary instruments. So whatever will you have created, the testamentary instruments you have created, maybe a testamentary trust, you review them periodically. Beneficiary designation, other documents. So who are the beneficiaries? Reviewing all those beneficiaries, because in some of the financial asset, the beneficiary can be the final legal recipient of your money. So who are those? Reviewing that periodically. Determining guardianship of children, who is going to be the next guardian. Distribute asset to beneficiaries, in what manner, what ratio these assets should go to beneficiaries, and managing estate assets. These are, I would say, an objective of estate planning. And when you look at all these, all of them are important. But these whatever elements are present, these cannot be ad hoc decisions. You have to plan them, and that's why estate planning becomes so critical, so important, especially when you have a special needs child to care. What are the estate planning tools which are generally used? Will, trust, letter of intent, legal guardianship. These are the four major tools. Sometimes in your life you might have to use power of attorney, so that can also be one of the tools. But largely these are the four estate planning tools for a family, for planning for the child future. Now this is a representation of a complete estate plan. How do you draw the estate plan? You go very deep into identifying what needs to be done. So suppose a will has to be created. So how it has to be distributed, how the assets are going to distribute. At suppose, for example, we have designed an estate plan for Rajiv Batra. So at Rajiv Batra demise, assets to wife. If wife is not there, asset to trust. If both parents are not there, then asset to the trust. For the child, who's going to be the guardian, whether he manages the financial affairs, only the personal affairs. Similarly, what kind of a trust should be formed, who are going to be the trustees, how do you transfer asset to the trust, letter of intent, the legal guardianship, asset inventory, what all assets you have, creating an inventory, and estimating the lifetime corpus for the child, which is going to be the main source of funds for the trust. So a complete estate plan is drawn to ensure that you can have the right kind of a framework, and plus you also have the source of funds available for that framework, which can provide a security to child future after your lifetime. And that's why I said estate planning is so important, and this creating a comprehensive estate plan is so important. What are the estate planning options you have? One, distribute asset to sibling or family member. So one estate planning option can be that the sibling or the family member would take care of the child, so you bequeath all the asset to that member. Gift to the special need child, so you give all your assets to special need child, or bequeath asset to special need child, and the guardian is going to manage the financials. Establish a special need trust, so you establish a trust and bequeath all the assets to the trust, which will take care of child financial affairs. Or distribute asset to the residential care or institution where the child is going to live. These are the estate planning options. And when you are identifying these options, you have to analyze at each level how these options are going to benefit, what challenges it can face, and how you can address those challenges. So let's come to the trust. What we are going to discuss today is private trust, what it is, how it benefits, and what kind of a structure you can look at. So what is a trust in a simple language? A trust is an arrangement. It's an arrangement between a settlor who's creating the trust. It can be parents, grandparents, a person, group of person who's going to manage the trust, and for the benefit of beneficiary. Beneficiary is going to be your child. So it's an arrangement between the testator, the settler who settles the money, you as a parent who settles the money, settles the asset in the trust, between a group of person, the trustees who's going to hold and manage those assets or money, and for the benefit of the beneficiary. That's a simple the structure of a trust. Now, what are the elements of a trust on which the trust structure is based? the author or settler of the trust. So person who creates a trust. So there is an author, a settler, a parents. If they are forming the trust, they are the settler or they are the author of the trust. The trustee is the person who's going to manage the trust. So initially parents can be the trustee. So they become the person who will manage the trust. After the parents, the next line of trustees, they will be the person who manage the trust. So the trustees, the beneficiaries for whom the trust is created, for the child or even for yourself also, the trust can manage your financial affairs in specifically in your old age. The trust property or subject matter of the trust, so the assets which are going to be managed by the trust. So whatever assets you pass on to the trust through within your lifetime or after your lifetime, that becomes the trust property. And the objective of the trust, why a trust is created, what it is going to do. So the trust purpose you set up, these are the 5 elements on which the complete trust framework is based on. So in a simple representation, so there is a settler who is forming a trust, then entity who where the assets are going to be transferred within lifetime or later on. The trustees are the one who's going to manage it, and the benefits is going to be passed on to the beneficiary. Within the same structure, there can be a protector who can be involved not as a trustee, but in other capacity, involved in the affairs of the trust. And the trustees, there can be successor trustees. Once the trustees are not there, or suppose tomorrow trustee resign or trustee dies, there can be a successor trustee of the same trustees. So structures can be created in a private trust, or in a simple in a trust, where you can create those layer of securities for managing the trust framework. Now in India, let's talk about what's in India is there. You have a public trust, beneficiaries, public at large. These are charitable trusts. So most of the charitable trusts are public trust, known as public trust. Private trust, where beneficiaries are specific individuals. So when you are forming a trust for your family, for special needs child affairs, you are forming a private trust. What are the types of trust which can be created? One is a revocable trust. Now, what is a revocable trust? A revocable trust is a trust which you can revoke at any time. You can dissolve the trust at any time. You can change the trust at any time. In a revocable trust, the assets ownership remain unchanged in general. Income tax, it does not have much of advantage because everything is taxed at settler's income. But it can be converted to irrevocable on settler's death or incapacitation. Now, where the revocable trusts are generally used, first of all, when managing multiple assets or properties, most of the families where they have multiple properties in different states and they want to bring under a single structure but want to keep the control with themselves, they form a revocable trust. Or for a special need child also, when you are not sure how this structure is going to evolve, what you might change something tomorrow, then you form a revocable trust. Second is an irrevocable trust, where once the trust is formed, you cannot revoke it back. Assets once transferred become property of the trust, you cannot claim them back. And irrevocable trust taxation depends on the structure you create. They are taxed either a specific trust or a discretionary trust. We'll talk about this. So the taxation will talk about this, but in an irrevocable trust, they are taxed as per the structure of the trust. Beneficial, yes, it is specifically beneficial to special children families where you want to provide a protection to the assets you have built up, to the legacy you have built up for the benefit of the child. Third is the testamentary trust, which is you create the trust through the will. So you do not create a trust structure today, but you leave it in the will, where the at the execution of the will, the trust is going to be created, and the executor will create the trust and will pass on the asset to the trust as per your desire in the will. Generally, in a testamentary trust, whatever the rules are for the trust, you write down in the will itself. So these are the type of structure which can be created. Now, what are the objectives of trust? Protect assets. So whatever assets you have created, built up, whatever legacy you have built up, you want to protect that legacy from lenders, from creditors, maintain a home, so maintain a residential home for the child, uh, protect the disabled beneficiary, and cover additional services, therapies, equipment. So trust, specifically objective of the trust is largely whatever assets are there, you want to protect those assets. If the child is going to be reside in the residential home, you want to maintain that home for the lifelong. You want to protect the beneficiary interest, the his living, and it covers all kind of services which you will require for your child care. So that's the objective of the trust you set up, or you look at when you are forming a trust. Let's talk about private trust. As I said, there are two trusts, public trust and private trust. What we are talking today is a private trust because it's a family trust you are creating for the benefit of your child. They are created and governed by the provision of Indian Trust Act. So there is a broadly an Indian Trust Act which is there, under which all kind of trusts are dealt with, and private trusts are also governed by the provision of Indian Trust Act. Generally, private trust does not enjoy the benefits, or the benefits which a public trust enjoy, especially the income tax exemptions that private trust does not enjoy, because it is a trust which is created for your own family benefit. Types of private trust. Now, when you have specific trust, when you form a trust, you define the income of the beneficiary. For example, there are two beneficiaries, and you define that each of these beneficiaries will receive 50% of the income every year. Then that share of that beneficiary is defined. That will be termed as a specific trust. Discretionary trusts are those trusts where you leave it the distribution of income to the trustees. So the trustees will decide based on the situation how much income to be distributed to each beneficiary. So these two type of structure under a private trust you can create. What are the benefits of private trust? There is no restriction on settlers or those who create the trust. So a parent can create the trust, they become the settler. Grandparents can create the trust, and even a legal guardian can create the trust. So there is no restriction on settlers or people who can create the trust. There are no standard term of the trust. Now, a private trust can be structured based on your family requirement. Terms can be set up in the private trust based on your family requirement. And that's why it says that there are no standard terms of the trust. So you can create terms of the trust, how the trust is going to be managed, how the income is going to be managed, where it is invested, how the distribution should be managed. Everything you can create as per your own family requirement. A trust does not go through a probate. Now, probate is a process of will going to the court. The trust does not go through the probate process. So that's an advantage or a benefit of creating a private trust. I'll talk about this more. Whoever create the trust can appoint the initial trustees. So if you are creating the initial trust, you can appoint the initial trustees who are going to manage the trust affairs. And a trust works only for the beneficiary. The main objective of the trust is that it works for the beneficiary benefits. So even the trustees have a responsibility of working towards the beneficiary benefits. And largely when you create a trust, especially for the child, the family members know very well why this trust is created. What is the objective of the trust? So generally the conflicts among the family members with related to the legacy, with related to the assets you have built up, that's get reduced, because each family members are well aware of when you disclose this, when you bring it to the front of the family members that this trust is created, so they are more aware of. So it can reduce those conflict among family members. Who can form the trust? As I said, parents, grandparents, legal guardian can form the trust. Now, a will or a trust, that's a question most of the families ask, whether I should create a will or form a trust. Now, I'll just uh, give you the difference between a will and a trust. But from an estate planning perspective, both these are required. Both these serve completely different purpose. Now, a will is a declaration of the testator regarding how his personal estate should be managed Whereas a trust is a document where you are authorizing an individual to manage the assets for the benefit of the beneficiary. So the meaning of both these or the objective of both these is completely different. Trust will cover all the estate, whatever estate you have on your personal name, where the trust will only manage whatever is transferred to the trust. Now in a will you can transfer some of the assets to the trust, some of the assets to the child. So the trust will manage only the assets which are transferred to the trust. A will gets effective only death of the testator, whereas a trust uh, is effective within your lifetime also, which we call as a living trust. Probate, the will goes through a probate process. Now probate is a detailed is a court process where a will goes to the court. When the court certifies uh, the the court certifies the legal hires and give a certificate to the executor of it for execution of the will. The minimum process for probate is 6 months to an year. The trust does not go through any such process. Now, what is the issue in a probate process is that till the probate process gets completed, the assets are not transferred. Because the will is not executed till the probate process is completed. So there are challenges there. Whereas the trust will continue managing the affairs of the child even if the will is under a probate process. Will can be revoked at any time before the death of the testator. You can write n number of wills. The testator can always change the will. Trust can be revoked only if it is a revocable trust. So totally depends on the type of trust you are creating. Will gets publicized on death of the owner. So when it is gets executed, so you actually publicize it, or if it's in a probate process, it gets publicized, or if it is challenged. Whereas trust is always kept private. So trust will continue managing the affairs and you don't have to make the trust public. So that's a difference between the will and a trust. But as I said, both the structures are required. A will is required for bequeath of the assets to the trust, and the trust is required for management of the financial affairs of the child for the lifetime. Taxation of a private trust, how it is taxed. Now, trust income is assessable either on the trustees in the representative capacity, or it can be accessible directly in the hands of the beneficiary. The trust is going to be taxed according to the structure. Now, if it's a specific trust, generally it is taxed at the beneficiary level and it is recovered from SSE. Whereas if it's a discretionary trust, it can be taxed at a maximum marginal rate, that is 30%, though there are some exemptions available to this. So a trust income, how it is going to be taxed, especially the private tax trust, is going to depend on the structures you create. Clubbing of income. So there is a provision of clubbing of income. What happens is that if there is a minor child and if you create a trust for the minor child, whatever income you distribute to the minor child, that is going to get clubbed with the parent, even in a private trust. But when you have a minor child as a special child, then this clubbing of income does not apply. And this exemption is given where clubbing of income will not happen. So you can create a separate tax file for the child. So that provision is also available to the private trust you create, where when you are distributing that income will not get clubbed with the settler's income. Living trust. Now, in a private trust, as I said, either the trust can be created through the execution of the will, or you can create a living trust. Now, what is a living trust? Living trust is a method of succession planning where you transfer the asset before your death to chosen legal heirs in the name of the trust created for the family. Put simply, living trust, you create a trust within your lifetime and you transfer the assets to the trust within your lifetime. Now that is a living trust. So you create a trust in your living and not at the will execution. Now, what are the benefits of living trust? As I said, it avoids probate. Living trust may save you money, and a living trust provides privacy, because once you have transferred to the assets to the trust, so the assets is not included in the will then, and the trust is managing those assets. No court intervention if you become ill or incapacitated. Now, suppose the trust is also going to manage your financial affairs. if you become ill or incapacitated, the trust will just continue managing the financial affairs. So the court intervention might not there. Now, why this court intervention question is coming? Because in general scenario, if you become incapacitated, the provision, there is no document wherein your family members can take custody of your assets. They have to approach court to take custody of your assets. So because of that, the court intervention does comes in when if you become incapacitated. Now, if the private trust is formed for that purpose, so then the court intervention will not be required. Whatever assets are there in the trust will continue managing the your financial affairs till you recover or for your lifetime. So these are the benefits of a living trust. Now, a living trust may save you money. Why this question is coming? Because in trust generally, if especially if it's a real estate properties. Now, when a real estate is transferred to a trust, then the stamp duty is payable. But when the real estate comes through will, it is treated as execution, and it saves a cost during that period. So that's the benefit of a living trust. So if the trust has been formed earlier and if the properties are coming through will, then it will save a lot of cost, especially regarding with real estate being transferred to the trust. Now, who is a trustee? So trustee is an individual who is responsible for a property or an organization on behalf of some other individual or a third party. A trustee is an individual. It can be an individual, it can be a corporate who is going to manage the trust affairs as per the trust provision. Trustee is supposed to make profitable decision for the entity under its authorization. The trust is supposed to make decision only for the benefit of only for the trust where the trustee is managing the affairs. Who can be a trustee depends on specific issues in the situation or estate, but largely it can be a family member, it can be a corporate, it can be a bank, a trust company, combination of individual and corporate. So you can have multiple people managing your trust affairs. So there is not a specific legal foundation. Yes, one legal issue which comes up is with respect to NRIs being trustee in your private trust. Now, there is a specific provision in a private trust which says under Indian Trust Act, which says that if a trustee stays uh, abroad for more than 6 months, the trustee has to be replaced. Now, with this provision, it's very difficult for NRIs to become trustee in Indian trust. So that's the specific provision which is there. And because of that, if you have an NRI family member as an NRI, then it's very difficult to include them as a trustee where they have the major decision making powers. So you have to look at provision and see who can be the trustees. Largely in Indian trust, it should be the resident trustees. Now, identifying trustees, though I have said there is no legal foundation, any family member, any friend can become a trustee. But whenever you are appointing a trustee, one, it is a legal responsibility. Second, you also have to look at certain qualities because he or she is going to manage the special child affairs through the private trust. So what are the qualities you have to look at? He should know how to manage funds, investment accounts, taxation matters. We do not want an experts in all the matters, but at least he should know how to hire professionals. Sensitive to special need child. So a trustee whom you identify as a future trustee should be knowing about the special child affairs, and he should he should have beneficiary top beneficiary care as a top priority. So for your child affairs, that should be the top priority for the trustee you have identified and whom you do want to include in the private your private family trust. Generally, most families have preferred trustees as family, friends, relatives, but you need to assess how much they know about the trustee role and also look at those qualities which are required to fulfill the role as a trustee, especially in a special need trust. Sorry. Now, within a trustee, you have professional trustees also. Now, professional trustee can be an individual or it can be a company, and they act as a trustee in your trust. Now, when they act as a trustee in your trust, so they manage the trust affairs as a trustee. They won't have any interest in the assets of the trust, and they will be working more for the beneficiary care. What role does professional trustee play? Generally, to check that interests of the beneficiaries are considered, the assets of the trust are protected for those beneficiaries, and the trust is running correctly. So a trustee, a professional trustee, when you appoint, it is going to be a responsibility for the professional trustee to look at how the beneficiary interest can be served, how it can be the long lasting, your assets of the trust can continue. For example, whatever assets you have transferred to the trust, now a trustee will look at that how these assets will manage the child affairs, will continue till the child lifetime. So what are the options for them to ensure that these assets or the legacy in the trust asset, they continue for the child lifetime, for the beneficiary, the day-to-day affairs of the trust is running correctly. So these are the roles a professional trustee have to play when they are appointed as a trustee in your trust. What are the functions of professional trustee? Arranging meeting with other trustees, making unanimous decision with other trustees, considering the existing investment policy and discussing with other trustees whether these policies should be changed, signing appropriate documents wherever required, ensuring all the decisions the trustee make and affairs of the trust are correctly recorded in meetings and in deeds, checking gifting is completed, other matters such as checking insurance policies are up to date. So if you look at the role of a professional trustee, they are managing the day-to-day and they are managing the long-term affairs of the trust in discussion with other trustees. So now why professional trustee is coming in? Before that, yes, there is a fee which professional trustee charge. It can be on the on the basis of the asset they manage, or it can be a fixed fee. So different companies have a different fee structure. But whenever you are appointing a professional trustee, there would always be a fee included to that. Now, one question which comes in is that whether professional trustee should be appointed because he or she is going to charge a fee, and you should look at family members or friends. My view is always that even if you have a family member or a friend as a trustee, one, it's a long-term responsibility. So you should make a provision in the trust even for a fee for family member or friends for acting as a trustee in your trust, because it's a long-term legal responsibility they are taking and they want to work for your child benefit. So they should be compensated for their time. Why professional trustees? What are the benefits? Well acquainted with trustee duties, they will be more or less would be knowing about the trust affairs, and they are personally liable to all the beneficiaries, and the chances of successful allegations of sham trust are decreased when you appoint as a professional trustee as one of the trustees in your trust. So because they know the affairs, plus they will be making all the decisions in discussion with other trustees who might be a family member, friends. So chances of probability of trust running efficiently is much higher. Now there is some element of cost in a trust which specifically you should be knowing. One is investment management. There can be a cost in investment management. Like you as an individual, when you hire an advisor, you pay a fee to advisor. So there is an element of cost involved. Similarly, the trust, when they will manage the financial affairs, there is going to be an element of cost involved. Investment management you will have a cost in trust administration. There might be some services specific to child care where you might have a cost involved. So these three are the costs involved. And at so when you look at these costs specifically, some of these might be a recurring cost. Now, why this cost is I am discussing this cost because when you are looking at funding of the child care, so it's not only about the fund which is largely required for the child, but there is some element of cost for the trust which also should be part of the funding which you are going to provide to the trust. So trust administration, you have funds received by the trust, managing distribution to beneficiary, accounts of the trust, investment management, trust corpus, custodian, managing records, other services. There might be ITR filing, managing properties, there can be a rental income, or there can be other costs. So these might be a recurring in nature, and so it becomes also one of the elements of the cost for the managing the trust affairs, and this should be considered when you are looking at funding of the trust. So how to fund the trust? What are the options? First of all, identifying funds is important, how much the trust needs, and from where you are going to identify that. Answering a question, what are the basic housing costs, custodial care, nursing services, personal needs, transportation costs, clothing, job coaching, entertainment, prescription drugs, over-the-counter drugs, meals, additional education, tuition books, special equipment, therapies, miscellaneous. Basically, working out the cost of your child care and identifying that this is the total purpose you require, which will take care of your child needs, personal needs for his lifetime. We have earlier spoken about how do you identify this lifetime care cost, and these are the elements for identifying that lifetime care for cost. Now that becomes the funds required for the trust. What are the source of funds? It can be so gift existing asset, leverage wealth with life insurance or life insurance. Now life insurance has a really an important role to play here, because families who there is a concern that you might not be able to accumulate the right kind of an asset which your child care would require, then life insurance becomes a very important estate planning tool, because it can bridge that gap after your lifetime, providing those amount of funds to the trust. So examine your finances, review your your assets, grandparent asset. If possible, avoid funds to the child, give fund directly to the trust. Even gifting from relatives or any other, may ensure that they gift it directly to the trust. Check beneficiary designation. So check all your financial asset whom you have designated as beneficiary, and then look at that how these assets where your child might be a beneficiary or any other member as a beneficiary, how these can be bequeathed to the trust, and choose the right assets for the trust. Now, why the right? Why I say the right assets? Not giving much of illiquid asset to the trust, ensuring that most of the assets you transfer to the trust are movable assets. To choose the right kind of an assets for the trust, so that the care for your child, the financial care for your child is much more efficient. Factors to consider, these are the factors which might change the required corpus, the fund for the child. Suppose there is a change in lifestyle. If you have the trust might have to purchase an asset which you would have thought of but you would not be able to do, then as the trust might have to purchase, so there the value might be higher. Hiring of more professional for child care, especially after parent lifetime, more professionals might be hired. Higher life expectancy of the child, what you have assumed, if the child lives beyond that, then the cost is going to increase. Hiring of additional staff to support childcare, increase expenses, increase in cost of medical care. Now, these are the factors which might change the funding or which might increase the fund so required for the child care. But then there are both sides. There can be factors which might decrease the required corpus for the trust. For example, parents build up a good corpus from their earning and investment. You might have a higher inheritance received from parents or grandparents or any other family member. There might be a family pension coming in the future. So you have to look at all these factors and then identify what is the amount of money which is required by the trust for managing the child affairs. Now, funding the trust with the assets you have, they're both pros and cons. Pros, wealth exists, you already have wealth accumulated, so no funding cost is involved much. What are the cons? Once you pass on the asset to the trust, you lose control of those assets. And so you might not have money left for yourself. So whenever you are funding the trust, ensure that you are doing a comprehensive planning. How much money is being passed on to the trust is not that something everything you pass on to the trust, but there is a money for your lifetime also. So both pros and cons you need to identify, and then the funding needs to be planned for the trust. This is a small checklist to when you are forming a trust. So what is the total amount required by the trust? Do you have adequate life insurance to fund the trust if something happens to you today? Is the trust nominated as beneficiary of life insurance? How the life insurance is going to pass on to the trust? Have you started monthly saving to accumulate the required corpus for the trust? How will the current assets, especially real estate, will come to the trust? Does will carry provision of funding the trust on your death? And have you advised a person concerned to direct all gift inheritance toward trust and not directly to the special child? So a small case study, how do you identify? This is largely how you identify the corpus. Swastik 5-year-old is a special child. Gaurav want to estimate the corpus required for his lifetime care. Swastik life expectancy is 70 years. Let's take an inflation of 7%. And there are some assets which are already allocated for meeting his expenses in his absence. So what is the corpus for the trust for Swastik care? Living expenses is 33,500. Yearly expense planned is 4,02,000. If you have to take inflation into consideration, the corpus which is required is 1.96 crore. That's the corpus Gaurav has to fund the trust with for Swastik care for lifelong. Now, there might be some additional money which is required because, as I said, there is an element of cost involved. So, with that cost, there might be some the higher provisioning which needs to be done for funding the trust. But when you are forming a trust, you also have to plan how the funding is going to happen to the trust. How to form a trust? Step 1, list down the objective, list down all the objectives by the trust. What it is going to do, is it going to manage only the beneficiary special child? It is going to manage your affairs also. So what exactly the trust going to do? What are its objective? Will it protect the asset? Will it distribute the income in what capacity? You need to write down the complete objectives of the trust first. Then decide the structure of the trust. What are the ownership pattern, where the assets are located, who are the family members, what is the domicile status, what is the stamp duty payable, what is the amount of money you are putting into the trust. So what all these, so you need to look at the right kind of a structure. So you need to decide the structure of the trust which you have to form, whether you want to have a revocable trust, whether you want to have a irrevocable trust. So what kind of a trust you want to form. Decide who will be settlers, trustees, and beneficiaries. So now, are both parents going to be settler or one parent going to be settler, and who are going to be the trustees? Only the parents or some other people, and who are the beneficiaries? Is it only the child, or is it the parents also for their old age? Whether they want to have the trust within the provision in the trust for their lifetime also. Decide on assets to be transferred. When do you want to transfer some of the assets now? Do you want to transfer asset only through will, or do you want to have both these provisions? Step 5, once you have worked up till step 4, you translate intention into a trust deed and register the trust deed to form the trust. Then your trust is formed, and after that you open a bank account for the trust, and your trust is functional. You start managing the trust affairs. Special need estate planners, we believe that the trust is only a starting point. It is also incomplete if you do not have an ecosystem where trust and legal guardian and other stakeholders can work with each other. They should understand each other role, even with the service providers. So they should be in sync with each other roles and responsibilities, and that's where this ecosystem, this concept of ecosystem is coming in. Now what is this ecosystem is all about? That once a trust is formed, the trust setups contracts with service providers, with other stakeholders for a periodic review system for the child affairs. With that periodic review system, will have professionals like doctors and others, even finance professional under that ecosystem, and All those professionals who are involved for the child care, they provide a periodic review system, and which is accessed by the trust, which is accessed by the legal guardian or by the family member who will oversee all the affairs. So generally, when you have this kind of an ecosystem, each of the stakeholders are aware of the other stakeholders' role. Now, how does this help? For example, if there is a health emergency, the child is in residential care, the residential care has to take a decision. The legal guardian has to sign the papers. The trust has to provide the funding. Now, if this ecosystem, they are already part of this ecosystem, they know very well how it has happened, what is the background, and the decision become more efficient. But in general case, if each of these parties is not aware about each other role, then decision making takes much of the time. So that's why this ecosystem is important for providing a secure future for your special child. Okay, this is about an organization, special need estate planners. What we provide, estate planning solutions, the ecosystem which we are looking at, will and trust, so formation of a will, formation of private trust. We have trusteeship and trust advisory services exclusively for special need trust. So that's all about trust. Now happy to answer questions.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. Yeah, hand is raised already. Yes, Dr. Jigar Shah, you can unmute
Jitendra,
and ask.
am I audible first of all?
Yeah.
Okay, so I missed the first few slides. That's why I raised the question also in that time. So I want to ask why you want to start a trust for a special needy child, because I have a younger kid who is now 6 year old, and the monthly demand for all therapies and everything it's around 40,000. So why you have a trust? That's the first question. You said all the stuff, but I think I missed a few of the first slide. That's why I had a question. And being a doctor, I want to say, suppose if I have enough corpus,
Yeah.
do I have additional benefits of doing this trust thing and formation of the trust? Because it looks like a lot of time to be needed, time to be spent on that. And the second question would be, can you just highlight and advertise trust for begging money from the NRIs and from outsiders of India? Suppose this point you want to highlight it, and you want that I want to do a more of a work for this type of the special needy childs. So can I just increase my money funding in that particular trust?
Okay. So first of all, funding of the trust, because it's a private family trust, it's not a charitable trust. So you have a impact of taxation on that whatever funding you receive. Okay. First of all, that. So you need to really look at from where this funding can happen, and if there is going to be any income tax implication of that. So, like for example, if the funding to the private trust is coming from blood relatives, the impact of income tax will be much lower. But if it is coming from non-blood relatives, then there is a high income tax implication, because it's not a public trust where you have an income tax exemption. Also, now coming to your question, why a private trust is formed. Now you have a special child. Okay, within your lifetime you can manage the child affairs, right? You will take all the decisions, all the assets are there with you, so you are going to manage the child affairs. What happens after your lifetime? Who manages the child affairs? Now there are two provisions. One, you leave the assets to the child in the name of the child, and you appoint a legal guardian to manage the child affairs. That can be one of the provisions. Now the what are the issues there? Now the issue is, the legal guardian, will he or he be will be able to manage a large legacy if it comes to, because it's a legacy for the child lifetime. For example, the responsibility on the legal guardian comes in when your child is, say, 15 or 20 years of age, and we are looking at 60 years, 70 years of lifetime. So that means the legal guardian responsibility of managing that estate is of 40 years. So he has to really think long term. Second, which is main concern, is the continuity of managing the child affairs for the lifetime. Legal guardian is also an individual. So when you answer that, trying to answer that question, what happens after my lifetime, the legal guardian also has to answer that question, that what happens after my lifetime, because he is an individual. What if legal guardian is also not available, say after 10 years, then who is going to manage the financial affairs for the child? That's where a private trust comes in, where a private trust would be, the structure would be there till the objective is completed. So till the child lifetime, the private trust will manage the special child financial affairs. And that's where this provision of private trust is coming in, that what is a structure you can create where the continuity of managing the child financials can be answered through his lifetime. See, in now when we answer this question, what after us, there is no certainty of life. And when there is no certainty of life, it specifically for an individual, it is going to be there for the next legal guardian after you also. So when you have to answer that question, and when you are looking at a framework which can stand till the child lifetime, then private trust is a structure which stand till the child lifetime. And once the objective is completed, maybe once the after the child lifetime, the trust dissolve and the assets are passed on to the legal heirs, or as per provision you create. So the private trust formation is specifically for meeting this objective, where the child financial affairs can be managed for the child lifetime, okay, which can be 40 years, 50 years, or 60 years. I hope I am able to answer your question.
Yeah. That's okay. That's the first question. That's the second question I asked you regarding that one. Can you just convert that private trust to the public trust for helping the other kids?
Okay. See, a public trust is more or less a charitable trust. Or the charitable trust you create where beneficiary is not defined. The beneficiary is public at large. So that's a public trust. Okay. And a private trust is a family trust which you create for the benefit of your family. So the beneficiary are specific individuals. Like here, it can be special child, it can be you also. So the beneficiaries are limited in a private family trust. Now, in both these trusts, the guidelines in a public trust are already created. You cannot modify the terms of a public trust. And you have to work whichever terms are created by the law, you have to work under that terms. But in a private family trust, you can create your own terms because it's your private trust. That's the major difference between a public trust and a charitable trust. So when you want to do a work for special children at large, like underprivileged children's, or where there is no single beneficiary, but it is the whole community, then it is a public trust. But when you want to form a trust for one individual or three individuals within your family, then you have to form a private trust.
I think, okay, we'll move to another question from Ujjwal Shah, sir. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
yeah. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So I have three questions, sir. Number
Yeah.
one is from where we can find professional trustees. Is there any agency or there is some firm which provides this kind of trustees?
Mhm.
My second question is, what if the trust funds are exhausted and objective is yet to be fulfilled?
Hmm.
And three is, what happens once the objective is fulfilled? What happens to the trust which you have created?
Okay. So with your first question, who are the professional trustees? Now, there is no specific comprehensive list available anywhere. There are professional trustees. Even our company is also a professional trusteeship, Special Need Estate Planners Private Limited. The difference between is that we are professional trustees only for special need trust. The other professional trustees would be would be a professional trustee in other trust also. So that's the basic difference. So professional trustees, the information is not available at a single dashboard. Okay, but there are professional trustees available. Second question which you ask is, what was the second question?
What if the objective is yet to be fulfilled and the
Okay.
trust exhausts the fund?
See, it's a trust. One is if the funds are exhausted, then obviously the trust has to decide how, because it cannot manage the affairs of the child. Largely, what happens, the trustees decide in these matters that what should be done with the trust. Okay, should the trust get dissolved, and where the financial are to be going to be provided, because trustees don't have any recourse, where this financial would be coming in. They will largely discuss with the the legal guardian, with maybe the residential care, or other family members. They will hold a discussion on this and will try to find a solution to this. So there is no single answer to this. What happens, largely a trust will function till the funds are available. If funds are not available, then the trust would get dissolved, if the funds are not available for the future. Okay, but this decision is not one a decision in one go. The trustees will try to discuss with all the family members, all the stakeholders, and then they might approach the court also, if it's an irrevocable trust, to probably dissolve the trust, or look at some other manner. So answer, trustees will try to find out in the discussion with family members. But yes, if the future funds are not available, it is very difficult for the trust to continue, because if funds are not there, what the trustees will manage. So the parents have to really work on to ensure that the adequate funds are available to the trust. Third question is, what happens to the trust, if the objective is met, what happens to the asset? That's the settler decide when he is creating the trust. So when you are creating the trust, you make a provision of the asset distribution after the lifetime of the child, or when the objective is gets completed. It can go to legal hire, it can go to charitable institution, as the settler decide.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I got my answers.
Thank you, sir. Next question from
Hi.
Mr. Rakesh Kumar.
Yeah. Hi, sir. This is Rakesh. First of all, the presentation, it was very high level presentation, and thanks for this informative presentation.
Thank you.
My first question is, if you want to just to coordinate with this trustee, to whom we need to coordinate, to whom we need to contact, first of all.
Professional trustees you are talking about?
Yes, professional. And
Okay.
first and second thing, is there in between private trust and charitable trust, in between, is there any more solution, is there exist or not?
Okay. So if for your first question, I have put up an email ID in the chat section. So info@specialneedestateplaners.com. As I said, Special Need Estate Planners Private Limited also has trusteeship services. We act as professional trustees, and we act exclusively on special need trust. So you can write to us, and we'll provide you the the structure, or the the professional trusteeship services, the details on that. So we can provide directly to you, right? The second is, what was the second question, Rakesh ji?
Yeah, second question is, in like you brief that there is a private trust and there is
Okay.
one more is charitable.
In between structure.
If any guardian want to contact in between the solution.
No, in between solution, there is no in between solution between, under Indian Trust Act. Either you form a public trust or you form a private trust. Largely, it will be private trust for the families. Okay. Now, within that private trust, there are different structures you can create, but there is no in between solution as such. Because if you do not want to form a trust, the solution to that is you will have to leave it to any family member to manage the child affairs, including the financials. So you have to look at that alternative, but the trust don't have any other in between solutions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next question. Suman Ghosh, sir. Oh, ma'am.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah. Yes, sir.
thank you. I have two questions, Jitendra sir. So
Yeah.
first question related to what Mr. Ujjal asked. So, so I think one of the slides you showed that the moment trust is built, you lose control, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And at the other, and in this, I think another slide you showed that trustees would report or kind of give some reports to guardian,
Okay.
to keep
Yes.
them informed. Is that right? Am I
Yeah.
right? Okay. So then my question would be, so if there is any change, like, if trustee decides that, okay, child needs additional equipment or whatever, some investment, would they ask the guardian before spending that money, or the guardian would not have any control? Trustee would do it and only just inform them, but then guardian would not have any say or any control whatsoever.
Okay. So your first query, what was your first question before this?
No, this is the question.
Okay. In one slide, so
No, I mean,
okay, I'll come to the
I just tried to connect the dots. Yeah. So when one
so
slide I saw,
yeah.
you said trustee would have the full control once
Okay.
you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Losing control of the asset. See, when I say losing control of the asset, now that's basically an irrevocable trust. So when you create an irrevocable trust and once you transfer the assets to the trust, that becomes the trust property, and you lose control on that asset because you cannot claim them back. Okay, that's what I meant by that. When you transfer the asset to the trust for the security of your child, then you lose control on that assets. Okay, so they are not in your control now. You cannot claim them back also. So
Okay.
one. Second, trustees officially are not responsible to report the guardian. Okay, because legal guardian is a separate individual, and
True.
trustees together make a decision for the child future, for the child care. Now, what I mentioned was creating that ecosystem wherein they would, form or have a contract with service providers and form a kind of a periodic review system, and they can provide a certain kind of reports through this review system to the legal guardian or to the family member. See, they are not responsible to provide, but this ecosystem this is a thinking from our organization that this kind of an ecosystem should be developed so that the legal guardian, the trust, the residential care, they can be in sync with each other.
Okay. So say suppose if I create a trustee, if I decide to create a trustee, I think it would be advisable to create that ecosystem, having a
Yes.
guardian, having the trustee. In that case, trustee, before going ahead with some decision, they would kind of liaise with the guardian, right?
Not every time. Okay, because trustees are managing the financial affairs. Now, where they would know what kind of a funding is required. Okay, either it can come from the residential care or it can come from the legal guardian. Right. See, the legal guardian is also, will take when the legal guardian knows that this much amount of money is required for the child care, legal guardian will put in front of the trustees that this much funding is required. Then the trustees will decide to fund that specific expense. So I think it's the either way, that the guardian can raise the funds required with the trustees, and the trustees decide to fund that requirement. And whenever trustees are taking a decision jointly to fund any specific expenses, they can have a discussion with guardian or with residential care. Probably the legal guardian can be involved in decision making. As I said, the trustees are not responsible to the legal guardian, so they won't involve legal guardian in all decision making.
Okay.
right? They will make a
Okay.
decision based on their jointly what they feel is right. But yes, they can consult legal guardian in certain matters where they might not be able to clear. See, a legal guardian would might be knowing about specific child affairs. Trustees might not know of those affairs, how they are managed. So then they can consult the legal guardian for any specific funding. For example, if residential care demands certain money, then trustees can consult the legal guardian for for identifying that whether this demand is right or not.
Okay. And then my second question is, I think for the fees related to professional trust,
Yeah.
you covered the high level details, but I don't. Can you please share it based on your expertise in that area? How much it could be, a tentative figure, something, so that
Okay.
we can keep it in
See,
mind.
there are two levels of services which can be charged. One is based on percentage of assets. Okay. For example, it can start with 1% of asset. If your asset size, the trustees are managing, if asset size is less than 2 crore, if it goes beyond 2 crore, that 1% can come down to 0.7%. If the asset size is more than 10 crore, it can come down to 0.1%. So like slab wise percentage is there where the trustees charge a fee. The other fee, it can be a fixed fee. Fixed fee is like, suppose the trustees will charge 1 lakh per annum. Okay. Or maybe lower than that, or maybe higher than that, based on the amount of work involved. What are the number of transactions they are going to do? What are the meetings they have to do? How much, they will be involved in decision making, how much they will be involved in conducting meetings. So based on that, they decide a fixed fee. So in both ways, professional trustee charge.
Thank
Now,
you.
this fees can vary respect to organizations. One organization can have a higher fee, one organization can have a lower fee. Percentage slab are more or less within the same range. Okay, the fixed fee can
Okay.
change for company to company.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think Ujjwal Shah, sir, do you have another question?
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
sir, regarding this professional trustee fees, that 1% of the asset value, if asset value is less than 2 crore or a crore, it is 1% per annum.
It's per annum. All fees are per annum.
Per annum. Okay. And my another question is not the question whether my understanding is right or wrong. Legal guardians always have to consult trustees for any sort of decision legal guardian wants to make, but it is not correct vice versa.
No, both roles are different roles. Legal guardian will not consult trustees with respect to personal affairs. Okay, they don't have to consult trustees, but largely they will consult trustees because it might have a financial implication. Legal guardian, see, let's look at the legality. Now, when you appoint a legal guardian can manage both personal and financial affairs for the child, right? If there are certain assets in the name of the child, not in the trust, the legal guardian is going to manage that child. The trust will not manage that assets which are specifically in the name of the child. For example, there is a bank account in the name of the child, okay, or there is a fixed deposit in the name of the child. The legal guardian is the person who will manage that fixed deposit, not the trust. The trust will manage only those assets which are there in the trust specifically, or for which you might have create a provision. Now, legal guardian, when it has to take a personal affair decision, it doesn't have to report, but yes, it will consult the trust every time it has to take a decision, because it will have a financial implication. For example, there is a change of residential care for any certain reason. Okay, it will consult the trustees also. So, and that's why I said this, about this ecosystem, that an ecosystem has to come in where all of these stakeholders consult each other for decision making they do for the child. It shouldn't happen that guardian is not consulting the trustees and taking a decision individually, and the trustees do not know what's happening with the child affair in the residential care. So when all these people are involved together, then only the child care decision or the child care, can be more efficient. So, and legally they might not be, responsible or answerable to each other. But I think through this ecosystem, they have to consult each other, because when the trust fund any specific expense, now that requirement is going to come either from the residential care or from the legal guardian. Otherwise, how will the trustee know that a specific funding is required for the child? Okay.
Got it, sir. Got it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Very true, sir. Next question, Harshit sir, you want to take next question?
Yeah, sir.
Yeah.
If the child is at present 13 years old, let's say, is there any method we can find out the future cost involved, the minimum future cost of the child?
Okay, you are on mute, Harshya. There is
Yeah.
already a webinar we have done on that. Okay, you can have a link. I think it's there already uploaded on the chat section. So there is a link of our earlier webinar session where we have done this calculation in detail. So you can
Okay.
see that webinar.
Yes, you can go through that webinar, and even on sir's website, you can see the calculator available to calculate the cost. After the webinar, you can, in detail, you can go about it. Right, sir?
The one you posted now, sir, ma'am?
That is our YouTube link, ma'am.
Okay.
In that, you can search various webinars on
Okay.
this. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes. Any other questions? Parents, any other questions?
Just one more, Suman here.
Sure,
Um,
sure, sir.
So it is advisable to have only liquid assets for trustees for funding the trust.
Largely yes, because if it is a real estate, see, if it's a real estate which is generating a rental income, okay, you might have that assets in the trust. But if it is, suppose, a real estate, probably your residential house, if the child is going to live in the same residential house, then you might have it in the trust. Otherwise, beyond this, real estate, if it is not generating any income, what purpose it will solve for the trust? The trust at the end of the day will have to sell that real estate and generate that income. Okay, so you have to look at from that perspective. If there are properties which is generating rental income, the trust will manage that rental income. So you can very well have these in the trust. And if it's a residential home, the child is going to stay in the residential home, you can have it in the trust. The trust will manage it. But beyond that, if there is any property, which is not generating enough of income for you, and the trust will look at alternatives. Suppose you have only one residential property. Today, rental yields in a residential property are to hover around 2%. Now it does not generate a sufficient income. So trustees will look at, that can I have more income than this in other alternatives? If there are other alternatives, they will like to sell the real estate and probably, look at other. If you have more liquid investment, moving that investment from one asset to other asset is much more easier. From real estate, there might be higher implications. So just because of that, we say that if the assets are more liquid in nature, it is easier for the trust to manage those assets.
Right. And last question is, would they be doing some investment as well? Because I'm just thinking, so if I say, suppose I have got 50 lakhs and I put into bank for a fixed deposit because nobody would manage it, right? And I say, suppose I assign it to trustee. Now, obviously, they wouldn't need 50 lakhs, I mean, for the first, say, a few years, right? So would they be also, doing some kind of investment in the market to kind of, see the money grow as well? For the
Yes,
benefit of the child?
they will certainly be doing it, because they have to sustain that corpus for the lifetime. Okay, so they will be taking a decision whether this rate of interest they are getting is sufficient enough or it's a very low enough, not catering to inflation. So they will like to invest in the alternatives where they can generate an income. Now, What you can do is, if you want to restrict some investment for the trustees, say for you say, in your trust deed that a trust cannot invest in direct stocks. So the trustees won't be able to invest this money into direct stocks. Okay. So the alternatives, if you want to restrict, you can restrict alternatives for the trustees. But surely the trustees will be looking at sustainability of the corpus, and then they will decide.
Yeah. I think the reason I asked it question, because based on what I understood from this presentation, one point is not clear to me, or it doesn't give me assurance that, you know what, when I build a trust and based on my financial planning, whatever fund I kind of decided that, okay, assuming 80 years of lifetime, X amount I kind of allocated for the trust, there were nowhere it is written that it is an obligation of the trust then to ensure that the objective is met within the money allocated. So there is nowhere. So I have seen that there is a question mark that if fund is already gone and if objective is not met, we don't know what's going to happen then. And then also so is there a assurance, and how can we get it? Do we need to do something else to ensure that, I mean, as a parent in a lifetime, to ensure that we assign this much X amount for the trustee, keeping whatever, I mean, to be safe, to be on safer side, I might plan for 90 years of life expectancy, and then do that. Then I am assured that till the 90 years of my child, trustee will take care of it. Money would not get exhausted. They would need to plan it accordingly and do it. Is that assurance available?
See, first of all, in your individual life also, okay, whatever planning you do, whatever money you have, when we do our financial planning, let's understand it's all based on assumptions, and these assumptions can change tomorrow. So nowhere you can put a foundation on the trustees that whatever money I leave it to you, you will have to manage within this. Okay, that because it can have implication on other side also, huge implications. So there is no way. Trustees don't have that legal foundation as such that whatever they have money they have got, they have to meet the objective from that money only. Okay, because then it becomes a restriction on them tomorrow if the money is not enough. Okay, you as a parent, you have provided enough money, but suppose there are some in some trust the money was not enough available due to certain other reasons. Okay, then the things will become difficult. So, and even in our personal life also, when we manage our finances, when we are looking at our own financial planning, we do not create a one-time exercise. We review the financial plan periodically, because what assumption we take when we are managing our life, those assumptions can change tomorrow. Okay, which can have financial implications. So first is that. So there is no legal foundation as such that whatever funding you have provide, they have to manage that. The legal foundation they have is that they have to work only for towards the child benefit. Okay, they have to be long-term thinking, like you as a parent think about your child. If any misdoing happens, then they are legally liable by the court of India. They can be held legally liable. They might have to pay penalties on that. Okay, so it's a legal responsibility, because it's when I say a legal responsibility, that means they are legally held liable for any misconduct in the trust. Okay, but you can't have any condition imposed in a private trust that even if you are setting the terms, you cannot have that condition that you have to meet the objective within this fund which I am providing to you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I can understand, like in our lifetime also, if we plan some amount and this like pandemic has come, and this kind of situation may arise in future also, so we cannot really.
Managing finances is not a one-time exercise. Okay,
Yeah.
plus yes, you plan whatever. Now suppose the identification of lifetime care cost, it is also based on the assumptions. It can change tomorrow, after 10 years down the line, it can change. Suppose inflation comes down, okay, we move to other trajectory, it can change, and the funding required might change. This funding required, which we have assumed, as I shown in the slide, there can be instances where this can change. Suppose the lifestyle increase, suppose there is a requirement which comes in, suppose there is a health emergency or there is any other emergency which takes most of the funds. So things can change. Now the trustees have to really think that how they can manage from these funds for the long term. That's where we say that identifying the trustees is very important. Okay. And yes, family members, friends, they are, you know, the most trustable person to appoint as a trustees, but then you are also looking at somebody who should be able to manage the affairs of the trust. Okay, the way you do financial planning for your child, and you know, the trustees should be able to do that financial planning. They should be able to hire planners, investment advisors to manage the corpus. Okay, so so it's
Sorry,
a
I have
ongoing
got.
process.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I've got one more question. So trustees, how many people should be part of that group? Like,
Okay,
is there a
minimum,
number like minimum 2 or
yeah,
5?
minimum two you require for functioning. Maximum there is no number actually. Maximum you can have as many, but
Okay.
generally in most of the trust we create, we are keeping between 2 to 5. That's a sufficient number we feel, you know, for a private family trust.
Okay, so I can have say 2 of my family members and then 1 professional trust and 3 of them working together,
Yes,
right? So
yes,
that
yes,
that would
certainly.
work well.
That's
Okay,
that's
okay.
works very well, I guess.
Yeah, okay. All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sir?
Yeah, yes, yes.
Last question, sir.
Yeah.
This if a family member is an NRI, can she be a part of the trustee?
NRIs, NRIs, the Indian Trust Act does not debar NRIs to become trustees. But what provision it has is that if a trustee in an Indian trust stays abroad for more than 6 months, then trustee should be replaced. Okay, so that's why it's difficult for NRI to become a trustee if they have the major decision making powers. Okay, so you will have to replace that. So till you have major decision making powers with resident trustees, probably an NRI can continue, you know, he might not have to resign, but he should not be. So suppose there are 2 trustees, one NRI and one resident Indian. In that case, NRI won't be able to continue. But if you
But
have 3
then,
trustees, 2 resident Indian and one NRI, might be possible, you know,
right.
you might continue.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
that makes sense.
Okay. Sir.
Yeah. Any other questions, parents? I think sir answered, I mean, most of the questions, and it was a very good session with lot of knowledge, and everybody wants to go over again because a lot of information is loaded in this session. Okay, I think we'll wrap up the session here, and we'll meet next in on. I'll just we have changed some dates, so I need to see. Sorry for this. So next we will meet on 26th. How to choose trustee for your trust. Yeah.
Yes.
On 26th, same time 6:30. We'll see you all. Thank you so
Yes.
much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
parents, for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night. Bye bye.